I'm going to be the newest ANB judge. Welcome back to the YouTube. Today, I'm going to run into a bit of a Q&A. I've had a few questions in the DMs, on Instagram, all of that, so I'm going to take you through it. Anyway, with that being said, before we start, cracking open a cold one. Coke, vanilla, no sugar. Now comment down below, are you a Pepsi Max vanilla drinker or a Coke vanilla drinker? What do you prefer? Curious to know. So, with that being said, I've got the Q&A up on my phone, so let's go through a few of them. They range from contest prep, bodybuilding and natural bodybuilding, training, nutrition, lifestyle, that kind of thing. So, a bit of a widespread of questions. So, hopefully, I'll be able to give some in-depth answers. I am sitting outside in the backyard, so it's nice and warm today. It's quite therapeutic sitting out here in the weather. Obviously, got a hat on underneath the tarp above me, so I'm not in direct sun. First one, how do you manage fatigue and maintain motivation during a long prep? So obviously when you're dealing with a 42-week prep, managing fatigue is a huge factor and something that you definitely need to be managing appropriately. Especially this last contest prep, I was having regular diet breaks. So if anyone's watched my comp prep recap, I sort of go through that in depth as to the diet breaks that I was doing throughout the prep. You know, I might diet for 8 weeks, then have a diet break. Diet for another 8 weeks, have another diet break. So I think that was hugely vital in managing fatigue. Of course, at the end of the day, you're gonna get fatigued in the contest prep. There's no beating around the bush there. If you can manage that, if you can manage how long you are in a deficit for, in terms of splitting that up with diet breaks, I think that can be hugely beneficial. In terms of motivation, it's an interesting one because the stage was always the motivation for me, and constantly getting better, beating my previous self, beating the previous package that I'd brought to stage, that was my motivation ultimately. So I always had that in the back of my mind. I knew that what I needed to do to get to stage and be my best. So there was no real added motivation that I needed. I didn't need to be watching Machiavelli motivational videos every day just to get me out of bed. I think I had that drive within me, knowing that I wanted to look my best on stage and effectively constantly progress and leave no stone unturned. What are the biggest misconceptions about natural bodybuilding? Now, shout out to the boys, Tom and Lockie on the podcast that we do have. So if you haven't checked that out, the Natty News Network. It's been awesome. I actually filmed again this morning, episode 10. So I'm sure there's numerous episodes that are out prior to this video when this comes out. We talk a lot about this. In terms of misconceptions about natural bodybuilding, I think people don't understand what's actually truly possible as a natural athlete. Particularly going to WNBF Worlds and seeing the pro show on that Sunday, just beyond what you would see ordinarily and beyond what people actually think is possible as a natural athlete. So, I was privileged to be able to watch that in person. So I think that's one of my goals, is to be able to show people what is actually possible naturally, because it's truly incredible and something that people probably overlook and probably underestimate what is actually possible as a natural athlete. How do you balance intensity and recovery in your training during a prep? It's a good one. I think a big one is managing volume, and that sort of ties into one of the questions earlier in terms of fatigue. So managing that volume across the week, because people can often think, particularly in a contest prep, you'll go, no days off, no stopping, let's just keep going, let's add more reps, add more sets, add more volume, because people think that the more you work, the more likely you are to get in shape. But I almost think it's the opposite. In a contest prep, particularly as a natural athlete, you're looking to maintain and retain the tissue that you built during the off season. Now, you need to find that balance in terms of what's the volume that I can do to maintain that. Almost treat that as a minimum effective volume that you can do to retain the tissue that you've built. So I'm a big advocate for quality sets over quantity of sets. So if you can retain those quality sets, you know, those hard sets, you know, jumping under the hack squat, pulling the heavy shit off the ground, pressing those heavy dumbbells and all those kinds of things, and moving some decent load, and having, you know, even reducing volume across the board in a contest prep can be beneficial in order to help retain tissue. So as far as recovery goes, to tie that all back in, I think you just need to make sure that you're resting enough, and utilizing training performance as best as possible, and using and treating your training as a muscle retention purpose as opposed to a calorie burn endeavor, because that's not what you should be doing. The way that you should be creating the deficit is via food output, so reduction in food, increasing output, and not your training. Your training should just be, I need to train with as high intensity as possible, and the calories that you burn from that should just be not even considered or even thought about to, you know, need to change or increase. How do you structure your diet in the off season compared to a prep? So I've obviously put out a number of full days of eating, both in a prep and a contest prep. Sorry, in a prep and the off season, and you'll see that it's largely the same. It's really the same, isn't it? Just in terms of different quantities of the food. So I might be adding more rice, might be adding, you know, sourdough in with my eggs instead of just having boring egg whites. So yeah, it's much of the same, really, as you can see by all the full days of eating that I've been doing. Of course, volume of food and calories increase in the off season, but it's just more from the same, easily digestible foods. I know some people during a contest prep will endeavour to, you know, find foods that, you know, have a lot more volume compared to an off season. But I kind of strayed away from that. I didn't necessarily stray away from it, I just didn't need to lean into it. I didn't need to incorporate things like potatoes or sweet potatoes or significant amount of veg or anything along those lines. Like, I kept things, you know, I was still eating rice. Yes, it may be a poverty quantity towards the end, but I didn't need to delve into that space, and whether I was through virtue of knowing that that was what had worked and knowing that there was a, you know, it wasn't there was a timeline, and I knew I needed to get to the stage, and I knew that it was, you know, eliciting a certain look in the physique, so I didn't want to change anything. But yeah, I didn't need to delve into those quote unquote diet hack, volume hack things later in the prep. What advice would you give to someone looking to start their first contest prep? Now, I actually recently filmed a reel about this, so it's front of mind. There's three things. There's three key things. First one, financial stability. Contest prep is expensive. You think of the food, the supplements, the coach, and then the shows. And then if you're traveling for shows, the tan, the registrations, all of that, you know, then you might even get a posing coach. You've got to buy trunks. You've got to do all of those things. It's expensive. Coming from someone who's had to travel last year, I went to Brisbane twice in 2 weeks. I went to Boston. It's not cheap. And you don't make any money from bodybuilding. So especially natural bodybuilding at the amateur level. So yeah, take it from me and know that it's expensive. I will say it's, for the most part, it's the same as a contest prep, an off-season phase, in respect to, you know, your food, your supplements, like those kind of things don't change. It's just the other stuff that is tightly linked to the shows. So that's expensive. The second point that I'd like to say or give advice about is relationships, and having your sort of life in order. Contest prep can be hard. It can be really hard and can be taxing on relationships. So my advice would be to make sure that, you know, your partner, your family, your friends are on board, and actually explain to them what you're doing, why you're doing it, and the duration that this is going to last. You know, the strain that it can put on relationships when you're saying, I'm not going to go eat out for 20, 30 weeks. We're not going out on a date night for this long. I'm coming to a family event and not eating, and that kind of thing. So I think it's really important that you have those discussions early on, prior to a contest prep, so everyone's on the same page and they understand. But I will say, a contest prep is not an excuse to just totally rule everyone out of your life and have it sort of, you know, completely dictate your life. So I think there is that balance that you can achieve. It is a challenge. coming from someone who's now done 4 contest preps and 13 bodybuilding shows. The last one, mental readiness. Are you mentally ready to go through a contest prep? Is your life in a position where you can actually go through a contest prep? You know, do you have the discipline, the motivation, and all of that to go through, as I said, it could be 20, 30 weeks, no off-plan meals, sticking to your cardio, sticking to your training, sticking to your nutrition, sticking to all of that. Can you keep that consistency for that long? If it's your first time prepping, I'm a big advocate for, you know, whether it's, you know, pre-prep phases where you might effectively mimic a contest prep, maybe not quite get to stage lean, and see if you even enjoy it, particularly before you even commit to a contest prep. So contest prep is no joke, and I don't think people should take it lightly. It's not something that you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to jump into a contest prep. It really needs to be thought about, and something that, you know, shouldn't be taken lightly. What is your approach to training lagging body parts? So it's a good one. I think a big one for people, and what people often do, is think when something's lagging, let's just increase volume. Let's just train it more frequently. Now, I don't disagree with that. Before I even get into any of that, I actually think people overestimate how much a certain body part might be lagging on their physique. For the most part, I'd almost go as far to say everyone needs a bit of everything. So you just need to grow everything. I'm much of the same. I just need everything to grow. Hence why I'm not overly specific with my training program. Everything just gets a pretty equal split of volume. But with that being said, if there is a lagging body part, let's say, before I even touch volume, I would want to go specifically into execution. I'd want to monitor someone's execution on those movements that, you know, let's say your quads are lagging. So let me see how you are squatting. Let me see how your hack squat is, your leg press, your leg extension. I want to see the execution. I want to see how you are executing those movements and say, well, actually, you're not really performing them very well in the first place. So why would we increase volume when you're not actually getting your biggest bang for your buck out of the movements you are doing? With that being said, if there are body parts such as like arms, shoulders, that kind of thing, something that can recover quite well, calves is probably another good one. You can probably afford to increase volume across the week. So it's not uncommon for people to, you know, add some lateral raises in let's say a lower body session, or some arms in a lower body session, just to get a little bit of top up volume. And those kind of body parts can recover quite well. You know, a bicep or a lateral from your shoulders from a lateral raise will definitely recover much better than, let's say, your quads if you're hitting those every second day. What are you most looking forward to now that you're entering the off season? A lot. I'm looking forward to, firstly, growing and getting super, super strong. I'm looking forward to the baby boy that's on the way in the next couple months. That's very, very exciting, and I cannot wait to be a dad, which is kind of wild to say that in the first place. And lastly, and this is something that has already been announced on Instagram, I'm going to be the newest ANB judge. You heard it right. I'm going to be judging the ANB show on April the 12th this year. Season A, Melbourne show. I can't wait. How cool is that going to be? And now, one of the main reasons I've wanted to get involved is because one thing I actually realised is that, you know, between 2021 and 2024, you know, that was the gap between competing. You sort of lose touch with natural bodybuilding and the federations itself, and you don't quite have the connection that you otherwise would. Obviously you do when you are competing, when you're coaching clients, but aside from that, you don't really have that connection. So now the reason I wanted to get more involved in judging and the federation being ANB, so they've been incredible. They've been incredible. I was obviously fortunate enough to get my ANB Pro card last year, so now I'm able to give back to the federation and help support them more. I want to get more involved in natural bodybuilding. I think it's great. It's my passion. It's what I want to help promote. And as I said earlier in this Q&A, you know, I want to show what is possible as a natural athlete. So I'll be able to give back to the athletes, help promote it, and really, you know, shine a light on natural bodybuilding in Australia and Melbourne specifically. So I cannot wait. So if you are competing, or if you're going to be at the show, come say hi. I've got lots to learn, of course, but it's all part of the learning curve. So yeah, that's something to look forward to. What strategies do you use to ensure you peak perfectly on show day? Now, something that's actually a misconception, I think, is the radical changes that you need to do in the lead up to a, peak week, or in a peak week, or in the lead up to a show. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. So, as I obviously documented all my peak weeks, and as you probably saw, there was nothing that really changed a hell of a lot. We utilized the data that we had in terms of, we knew what load-in carbohydrates were required. There was no, 1,000 gram of carb ups. They were just linear loads. We progressively got added carbs in. The fact that I did 4 shows in 5 weeks, I wasn't able to, wildly load up carbohydrates, given that I was probably going to have another show, a week later. But equally, you don't need to, especially as a natural athlete. You don't have as much muscle as these guys that are going on the Olympia stage, where they're able to load 1,000 grams of carbs for days on end. We just simply don't have the muscle, and therefore don't have the fuel requirements. A lot of people overestimate how much food they need. So in terms of my peaking protocols, they weren't anything, radical. You'd probably be bored if I listed out exactly what I did do. So yeah, if you take anything away from this, you don't have to do as much as you think that you would. All right, last question to finish on. When are you going to step on stage again? I've had a few people ask me this question. When are you going to step on the pro stage? I don't know. With all that's happening in life, I don't know. I am training as if I'm competing tomorrow, but equally, I know that it's not necessarily going to be a 2025 thing. It's not going to be 2026, maybe 2027, maybe. Or is it 2028? I don't know. I've got no plans set in place. I'll have discussions with AJ over the next, few years as to what that's going to look like. But yeah, no imminent plans right now. But equally, in saying that, I'm training and doing everything as if I was in a prep, as if I was, about to step on stage or about to start a contest prep. So, as I said, it's the stage will always be there, and when I next step on stage, I want it to be like I belong on a pro stage, as opposed to making up the numbers. So, yeah, it could be a while, but who knows? We'll have to see. That being said, I'm getting hot. I'm getting toasty out here. I hope you've liked this video, so please like, comment, subscribe. If there's any other questions you want me to answer, please pop them down below in the comments, and I'll be sure to answer them in a future video. Catch you in the next one.